Hello and welcome to Brain Says Strange Things. I'm Patrick, this is my brother Jordan, and this is the podcast where we talk about horror movies. In this episode, we are going to be reviewing two films by the cult B-movie director Larry Cohen, who did a lot of movies, very active during the 70s and 80s in particular. And we're going to be taking a look at his films It's Alive, about the killer baby, and a very strange giant monster movie called Q, the Winged Serpent. So these are two films that we watched this evening. I had seen Q once before, but we both saw It's Alive for the first time. And I think that's the movie we're going to be talking about first. It was released first in the late 1970s and spawned two sequels. So It's Alive is...
And a remake.
And a remake. In 2008, I think, right? Which we have not seen. So It's Alive is pretty much what it sounds like. It is a movie about a killer mutant baby. So this seemingly normal couple, they've already had one perfectly normal son, and the wife is going into labor at the beginning of the movie, but she gives birth to some kind of monster. And we don't see the mutant baby monster right away, and we don't see it a lot throughout the film.
You never really do see it.
Yeah, they're pretty conservative in actually showing the monster, which I actually kind of liked. But anyway, she gives birth to this baby. It kills all the doctors at the hospital, escapes, and most of the movie concerns the hunt for this baby as it's killing people around the city and maybe kind of making its way back to its parents.
It's stealing milk.
Yeah, it's a little baby, so it's ravenous for blood and milk. Those are kind of its two things, it seems.
The alternate title of the movie.
Yeah, so the main character is pretty much the father who kind of struggles with his feelings about the child. He kind of acts throughout most of the movie as though this is not my child, this is just a monster, but we can see that he has some kind of conflicting feelings about that. So it's a really interesting... It's a very simple premise, but the way that the story plays out is kind of interesting, yeah. I thought. So, I don't know, what did you think of It's Alive?
I liked it. Mm-hmm. I thought it was weird, like the tone that it struck.
Yeah, it was very odd. Both of these movies were very odd.
I don't know if it because you said it's exactly what it seems like.
Well, in terms of the premise of the movie, but yeah, you're right.
Yes, but it just seems
it's not what you would think.
It almost seems like B footage. Like they're filming stuff not that you wouldn't think that they would be focusing on. Mm-hmm. They're focusing more on how the other characters feel about it, which I guess is kind of, I don't know. I've kind of found that a little boring because there's not much you can say about a mutant baby. Should we have killed it? Should we let it live? That's pretty much it.
Yes.
There's not a big debate going on there.
Right.
They bring up abortion at the beginning. They mention it. They don't talk about it, which I guess is probably for the benefit of the movie, but I don't know. It seemed kind of weird that they didn't really have much to say when they're going back and forth between all the characters. No one really seemed to have that much of an opinion on it. And the father was weird because he essentially is the hero of the movie, or the main character, but he's so unlikable, through all of it, I think.
Because he was trying to kill his own child?
Yeah, he's beating his wife, and he's so removed.
Well, I don't know if he beats his wife.
He punches, he punches her in the head 2 times. So take that for what it is. But he just, for most of the time, he's so removed.
Yes.
He doesn't react.
Yeah.
And I guess he's supposed to be in shock. The fact that they made it a little more realistic kind of made it a less effective movie. Kind of the opposite way, The Exorcist works really well. They treat it so real. But by doing this, I mean, it is a rubber baby.
Yeah.
Going around killing people. And at the end of the day, they're just hunting it down. It's just like any other movie. Any other...
In terms of, the plot.
Any other, monster movie. Yeah. in terms of any other kind of monster.
Yes.
They chase it down. They chase it down into the sewer.
Yep.
And they end up killing it, and then there's some big lesson at the end, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know. I don't think it's as good as probably what you're saying that it is. I found it kind of boring.
Mm-hmm. I did find it a little slow paced.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I liked it. I like that it was.
I definitely don't say that it's a bad movie.
Yeah, I like that it was.
It's interesting. I don't know if that worked.
Yeah, I think you're right in that it was a little slow paced. I didn't quite get bored, but I got a little antsy with the pace of the movie a little bit towards the end. And I also think you're right that it didn't have a particularly strong point of view or political message or theme, although there were suggestions of a lot of different themes.
Yeah, they kind of like bring it up and don't say anything about it. And also, I was thinking, like, who is the main character of this movie? Like,
I think it was the dad.
Who are you supposed to? I guess it was.
Definitely the father.
But then, I mean, are you supposed to be disagreeing with their opinions or agreeing with them? Like, I just didn't know what they wanted. I don't know what they were trying to convince me.
But you could also say that good movies maybe kind of leave that kind of up in the air and leave some of that up to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, ultimately what I liked about this movie is that, you know, you hear that it's this movie about a mutant killer baby. It's called It's Alive. You know, I've seen images of the creature online.
You see more of the baby on the cover of the DVD.
Right, yeah, I've seen the images. So it's like you think, like, okay, this is going to be like a really just kind of like fun, cheesy monster movie. And on one level it is, but I was surprised in this movie, and I actually would have been more surprised had I not seen Q first, because this seems to be kind of Larry Cohen's approach. But I was surprised by how nuanced the characters were and how interested the filmmaker was in spending time with those characters and letting those characters have an arc throughout the movie. Which, I'm not saying it was great. I'm not saying these are, like, Oscar-worthy performances or it was, you know, really intriguing new ideas. But just the fact that you actually are presented with some depth in a movie that could have been really silly. I mean, this could have been, like, Critters or something. Mm-hmm. But the mutant baby was just kind of a vehicle to, you know, explore the father's feelings about having birthed this, or, you know,
and the
his
mother.
wife.
The mother,
yeah, and the mother. Well, although she wasn't, you know, it was interesting because I feel like, you know, the mother is the one that is like, she's connected to the child, she's carried the child, she's given birth to the child, but her character's reaction was basically to just kind of, she went to this kind of like postpartum craziness. Like, she just became a little unhinged, you know, like she had sympathy.
Became very unhinged at the end.
She had sympathy
like
for
clearly insane.
Yeah. Which I thought that was kind of maybe a missed opportunity a little bit. You know, you were very much from the father's point of view. And I actually thought, like, you said he wasn't a very sympathetic protagonist. Like, I kind of see what you're saying, but at the same time, like, I did kind of have some sympathy for him because...
Well, it's weird that in a movie about, like, right away, it starts out with the baby being born.
Yeah.
And you know it's a mutant. Everybody knows it's a mutant, obviously. And it escapes. He's in denial a little bit. But then, right away, his focus shifts, and he's like, oh, man, this is going to look so bad for me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, now the press is chasing me down. They want to interview me and talk to me
but
about
again,
the
like,
baby.
I think...
So, again, that is, like, realistic,
I think
if that happened. But does it make for an interesting movie? I don't know.
I don't know. Would it have been more interesting if it was just a typical...
I think it needed a better story. This sounds so weird. It needed a better story with the actual baby itself, instead of it going around causing mayhem.
Do you think...
Just being a regular... It sounds so weird.
Well, I think of these two...
But it's like that... The part with the family is the most interesting aspect of it.
That was the whole
they focus
movie.
on something what you don't think they're going to.
Yeah. It maybe just needed a little something else in there.
Yeah, it just, like, they interject scenes of, like, you know, the POV of the baby walking around.
And those were the typical monster movie moments, right? Like when the baby would kill people. But most of the movie was concerned with the kind of the father's journey through the film and leading up to the ending where he does kind of accept this monster as his own child. I don't know, there's just something I really like about such inherently goofy material, but being taken so seriously by the director and the actors, I thought. Ultimately, I liked it. I really enjoyed that about it. And I like that they were so restrained in showing the baby. Like, you really want... After that initial scene in the hospital, like, you really want to see the monster, but they really don't show the monster. I'm guessing they probably do more in the sequels.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of curious as how the other movies play out. But I had a little problem with the baby, too, where he would kind of, like, alter size. And I know it's weird because this is almost kind of the opposite of what I think about a lot of movies. But this is kind of an example, like, how it doesn't work sometimes. Where if you leave it up to the audience's imagination, they create something much worse than anything, because calling it out. But when they're showing, like, how the baby escapes and then there's, like, a little hole in the window, like that big.
But you think the baby?
But the baby's like. But then they take time at the beginning when she's giving birth to say that the baby is like huge.
Right.
Like
huge for a newborn baby. A newborn baby.
Right, but still, a newborn baby wouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
And then there's like little, like, he breaks out of the skylight. It's like a hole like that. And then he's crawling on the ground. He's kind of like hopping in some scenes. It seems like, because his POV is like going all over the place. And then you see him, and it's just like a little finger puppet, sort of. When they show him. I wish they would have set up like a little bit like how he kills people.
Right. Okay.
Like what?
So you would have liked...
Does he have legs? I don't even know if he has legs. Does he?
I think he has legs.
They didn't really show it. They just showed like his arms crawl out.
Yeah.
Does he crawl on the ground, or does he walk, or can he run, or?
Yeah.
I would.
That's true. That was all very.
You don't necessarily have to show it, but they could have like set it up a little bit.
Okay.
Like this guy's eyes got ripped out or something.
He
after he chopped his legs off.
Go after the throats a lot. I think he just kind of like would.
Yeah, he just like springs up and like attacks people's necks.
Yeah, he definitely could like jump and stuff, I think.
I guess.
Yeah.
But then, how does that fit in with something being like realistic? You know, it just like.
Well, I feel like the monster wasn't realistic, but like that.
But
it was kind of like
it was kind of like in the same movie.
It was kind of like that was the one element of like suspension of disbelief, and then like people reacted realistically around that outrageous element. But I see what you're saying.
But it wasn't just that though. It was like how they kept executing it too.
Right.
It wasn't just that it's a killer baby.
Right.
I can go along with a movie like that. It was just like every time that they show it, they didn't really know. Maybe they didn't know what the baby was going to look like.
Or maybe they just weren't that interested. The people who made the movie, they were more interested in the human characters.
Maybe. And
they just weren't as interested in the monster. Which I guess it didn't really bother me when I was watching the movie, because I was more interested in the human characters as well.
I think it's the interesting part. I don't think it's very interesting. Like, what was so interesting about it? Just the dad kind of unraveling a little bit?
Yes, but also just that the movie would take that kind of approach. That it would have that kind
of that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I like the idea of it, but...
Yeah.
Maybe
and that's why I said, like, and also, actually that's why I think, like, Q, which we should start talking about soon, is a little bit better of a movie. But one more thing about It's Alive, do you think it would have been better, and what do you think about, like, where did this mutant baby come from? Like, do you think they should have explained that a little bit more?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, because it doesn't have, there are some kind of, like, hints and suggestions.
They leave it vague. They're just kind of like, they don't really... mention anything that there was something wrong with the family inherently. Right. So it's...
and they kind of put forth this idea of like...
well, it's like the environment is polluted in many different ways.
Yeah,
like,
and they talk about...
like, oh, look, there's smog out the window, or you shouldn't smoke that, or, you know, it's all that kind of stuff.
And they talk about, at the beginning, there's an exterminator in the hospital, and he talks about how... using the poison.
It is a very pro-life movie, because when they talk about abortion and they had mentioned, like, they had thought about it, I guess. They didn't obviously go ahead and do it because now they have a mutant baby on their hands, but that guy was talking about how he would kill vermin, whatever, insects,
roaches.
And once you start trying to kill them, like trying to...
Then they become more powerful.
Disrupt the natural order... then they kind of come back and
I didn't read that as a
pro
pro-life message at all, though.
I don't know.
At all. I thought that was like a throwing out...
I think it's in there. I don't think they necessarily meant it, but it's vague, so you can kind of...
I think they were throwing that out as like a potential origin for the baby, saying like we are like altering the planet through pollution and stuff, and now these new creatures who are maybe better able to survive in this new environment are being born.
Are they better to survive?
I think that's like that was like one idea that was kind of implied. Like this is kind of like this is like a natural mutation that might
so it's
be
like
better
X-Men.
Yeah, that might, because we're altering the Earth through pollution, might be better able.
So
to
that baby
survive.
was the first X-Men.
He could have been. He could join the X-Men. Maybe
that would be awesome.
That would be a good one.
I see a crossover.
Okay, well, so I really like that movie. You kind of like the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're probably right. I think everything you mentioned would have made it a little bit better. But I know I enjoyed it.
It's not necessarily one I'd be going out and like rewatching it.
No, but I would like to see. I would like to see the sequels. I would own it. I would buy it. But I did buy Q the Winged Serpents and rewatched it tonight. You watched it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So our first Larry Cohen movie was about a little monster, and Q is about a giant monster. The Q of the title...
He's not that big.
He's big.
Well, he's big, but... I think a giant monster like Godzilla or something.
Well, he's not as big as Godzilla, but he's in that mode. He's a giant creature, flying creature. And the Q... It stands for Quetzalcoatl?
Quetzalcoatl.
The Aztec flying serpent god. Mm-hmm. So this movie, I think, actually did have a lot more different levels. It had a lot more going on. I thought it was a lot more interesting on that level. I don't know how you felt about it, but... Mm-hmm.
No, I think this was the better of the two.
Yeah, I think so, too. It's... so basically, there's something is like... killing people from on high in New York, and this is filmed very obviously on location in New York. Mm-hmm. The creature makes its base in the Chrysler Building. It was actually filmed in the Chrysler Building.
It speaks a lot to like practical sets and locations.
Yeah, it's very New York.
The fact that they filmed it like in New York and it's like actually in the skyscrapers and stuff, that looked great.
Yeah. So there's this creature killing people in New York, but nobody quite has seen it clearly or knows what it is. And meanwhile, there's all these ritual type killings where people are being flayed alive that resemble these old Aztec traditions. And police detective played by David Carradine. Great cast in this one.
Mm-hmm.
And Shaft. Richard Roundtree is also in this as a police officer. They're investigating this, start to make a connection between the two things. And is it Michael Moriarty, I think is the name of the ostensibly main character.
Oh, yeah, I should have looked up his name because I like that guy.
Great actor. Kind of a two-bit crook. He finds out where the monster is headquartered in the Chrysler Building and kind of holds that information over the police. So there's a lot going on.
He also uses it to his advantage to kind of get out of...
Yes. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of different motivations of all the different characters. Again, kind of centered around this inherently goofy, really over-the-top premise. Mm-hmm. So the movies had that in common. And they also had in common... just really good kind of like method acting, a lot of great scenes that were just dialogue between the characters. Mm-hmm. I thought that was all true of both of these movies, just more so in Q. Like a lot of what I liked about It's Alive would apply to Q the Winged Serpent. They just did it better in Q the Winged Serpent. And it's also got great stop motion effects. I like the kind of stuff by David Allen, who did the effects for Puppet Master. So... yeah, I love the Puppet Master movies. So yeah, I like Q. You preferred it to It's Alive. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I liked it a lot better than It's Alive because I did find the story with Q to be more interesting.
Yes, it was more. I mean, the stuff that was going on.
Obviously,
with the humans,
it's a little more complex.
It was a lot more complex. I mean, the stuff that was going on with the people was more complex. The mythology behind the monster was more complex.
And it also doesn't really sum up where the demon came from. They prayed for it, I guess.
Right, that's vague too.
But ultimately, like, where the hell did this egg come from?
Yeah, that's
true. It's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah. What came first, the Winged Serpent or the egg?
Quetzalcoatl or the egg?
Why didn't this movie get a sequel?
Or a remake. This would work for a remake, I think.
Yeah, but they just did it CGI and I wouldn't like it.
Okay. Jeez, Debbie Downer. But I like that part because it would tie in with the police detective story because they're trying to solve what's going on with these people that they find that are flayed.
Yeah, much
you
of
wouldn't
it,
necessarily make that connection,
right?
And I don't think actually a modern audience would make that connection either.
Yep.
Like, do a lot of people know who Quetzalcoatl is?
No.
I mean, I didn't, but it could be a common thing.
Yeah. Well, no, that's what I liked about it because, like, you know, there's so many giant monster movies, but this, like, kind of married that genre to, like, a police procedural.
It did seem like
gritty,
that.
realistic police procedural. Yeah. And I thought that's
It seemed like a detective story.
Yeah, what a neat idea to have a giant monster in the center of, like, this gritty, realistic police procedural with these really terrific character actors. I thought it was cool. Kind of like one of the things I like about Cloverfield, in that it combined a giant monster with the first-person POV style. You know, two genres that you don't think would go together, but they actually work quite well. And as a fan of giant monster movies, I appreciate people who kind of bring a fresh, new approach to it, which this certainly was.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think Q could have looked a little better. Q kind of looked like a lot of other David Allen special effects. Remember that Laser Blast movie?
Oh, yeah.
Turtles?
Yes.
It looked like one of those.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's true. Q is, when you actually... And again, you don't see Q head-on until later in the movie.
That's cool the way they do it, though. It's almost like the perspective is really good, too, where they do the aerial shots, and they'll show, like, something floating in the background.
There's a lot of aerial shots in this movie.
But I think they look good. It wasn't like stock footage. It was like they were filming around the building that they were at.
Yeah, a lot.
And they do it every time, too, when they don't really have to. Remember, there's, like, the sunbather? See, it's got everything. It's got all those stupid B-movie elements to it, too.
Little bit of nudity.
There's a peeping Tom and a sunbather. And
they'll
go around the actual roof that they're on. You know, you can tell, like, they're actually trying to film this. I thought that part of it worked really well. It kind of opened it up a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
It looked, like, more impressive, I think.
Yeah.
Even though the monster might not have looked. He looked good. It just didn't look like that creative, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. I actually
because every time like his head would pop in the window, it looks stupid. So it's like when you see him like flying around.
There's something I find really charming about the stop motion special effects. But you're probably right. I didn't make that connection between the aliens and that movie Laser Blast, which David Allen also did.
Yes.
But they did kind of resemble that, and I did actually think, like, when they would show Q close up, I was like, oh, he's kind of cute, or she. I guess it was a she. She was.
There's not a lot of detail in the close up. It's all like kind of like a puppet, right? Is that how they did it, or is like a?
I don't know how they did the close-ups. I don't know how they did the baby all the time, and It's Alive too. Was it sometimes like someone in a little costume, or was it always a puppet?
I think it was always a puppet.
There were parts
but you couldn't tell because it did change
costume.
size.
Yeah, I actually wondered about that a little bit. But anyway, we're on Q now. So, so Q looked a little weird, but I don't know. I liked it. I like that. I mean, in a way, this movie was like just a weird kind of throwback because it came out in like the 80s, but yet it's using.
I mean, aside from the fashions, it looked a little older than the others.
Well, yeah, and I think that's because it's a giant monster movie, and that was not the fashion in horror at that time, and it was stop motion special effects, you know, but yet it was very gory, and it was this gritty police procedural. So I think this movie is kind of very much like a cult favorite, and you can see why. It's just a really unique film that I can see, like, people at a time maybe, like, not quite knowing what to make of it.
I can see why it would get re-released on Blu-ray, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, definitely something that people would buy, but who's that guy? Talk about that guy. The main guy.
I think his name is Michael Moriarty, and he starred in other of Larry Cohen's films.
Really?
Yeah. So no, he gives this terrific. So his character is essentially the protagonist.
He's a small-time crook.
Small-time crook. We know he's a former drug dealer. He's done time formerly, and he bumbles across very important information.
He keeps trying to go straight, but he keeps getting sucked back into it because he's kind of like.
So that's the type of guy this is, and he essentially stumbles across this huge important piece of information, which is where the creature's nest is, information that the police need to stop him, and he essentially works out a negotiation with the police where they will give him like a pardon for the crime that he's been arrested for, and give him $1 million, and he will show them where the creature is. So this is all very much the stuff of like B movies, but it is like this actor.
It's more like like detective.
Yes.
He seemed like a character out of those.
This actor takes the role so seriously, and I think he does a phenomenal job. It's a very internalized, very method performance. He's a very twitchy kind of character. I mean, I don't know. Like, what is your kind of take?
It first came across to me as it just stood out from the other ones, and it was pretty annoying. But once you realize that that's kind of what he's going for, like seriously, that's not like an excuse,
right?
He seriously was trying to be kind of he was on edge all the time.
Yeah,
so there's that scene, that weird scene at the beginning where he's playing on the piano. He's like singing every note. It's just like, this is really unappealing. This is a character we're stuck with for the movie,
right?
But then as it goes on, and the scenes with him and his girlfriend are really good too, where they're just kind of like fighting. He doesn't punch her in the head like the other guy.
Yeah, although they do mention that there has been some physical abuse there too, so it's a kind of weird theme.
Yeah, see, I was wondering how far they would take it with that guy. What he would, not necessarily with his girlfriend either, but there are also the scenes where they give him a gun, but he doesn't want to use the gun.
Yep.
And then he doesn't kill the guys that are after him for botching this robbery or for running away, whatever he did. He lures them next to Q, like in the vicinity, and Q kills him.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like a really good
and
he kind of maintains that same line, like it's not out of character for him to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just
it doesn't necessarily make him a villain either.
No, but it's interesting. It's not a typical, like, it certainly is not a typical, like, action hero protagonist.
Well, when I read that review that made me, I guess you owned it, right?
Right, I had Q, but you want to do it based on this review that
I just read this review for, like, it was like a cult movie, but I hate that term, cult movie.
Yeah.
But this...
but this is one.
Actually, it is a cult It is. It's a very good example of one. It kind of just stood out. It was like all these other movies that I heard of, and then Q, the Winged Serpent.
About a
giant...
giant...
What the hell is that? And then you read about it, and it's like, a crook discovers ancient... whatever it was, demon and its egg.
Right.
And I was just thought, like, right off the bat, I'm like, that sounds a little different than what you normally.
Very creative.
Why is the crook the main character? I guess I don't know.
Yeah, very creative premise, and there's that scene. I think my favorite scene with that character is when he.
Don't say the part that I fell asleep during.
Oh, it might be. He's negotiating for his $1 million and his pardon, and he kind of like goes on this rant and
about like what he wants.
Yeah, about what he wants, but then at the end he's like, he has some kind of like friction with Richard Roundtree's character, who's like kind of more a hard-nosed police detective as opposed to Carrady's character.
He's the bad cop.
And he says something like, you guys set me up years ago. I was 19 years old because that cop wanted to make a bust, and
he's still hanging on to that.
Yeah, and the way he like delivered that line and the way the actor played it really gave you a sense that this is a real person with a real history that goes beyond the limits of this film. And for a B, movie, I just felt like that was great. That there was so much depth and nuance that this actor was trying to put into this character. And that was there in the writing. I mean, credit to Larry Cohen, too, who did the scripts for both of these movies as well as producing and directing. So, I
like that with this character, too, because in a lot of movies you'll notice right away how they keep throughout the whole movie, they're setting them up to be the hero. And they did a little bit with him in this, because, like I said, he didn't use the gun and stuff like that.
Yeah. But you kind of can't help but like this guy.
Yeah, even though he's doing like things that aren't what you're supposed to be doing. It's not a crazy original concept, but in a movie like this, I wasn't expecting it at all.
Yeah, it just adds another layer.
I just liked him. I liked his character in the movie. Like,
fun to watch.
Like, that's a good actor that really stood out.
Don't you wish they would have done a sequel to this? I would have seen that.
I suppose, but...
I would have seen a second...
They would have to do something weird with it, because remember at the end of It's Alive, where they just go... after the baby's killed, I'm going to spoil things, but whatever. It's just like a line, they get a call in the police car as they're driving away and go, there was another one found in Seattle.
Yep.
And he just hangs up the phone, and then they drive away.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah.
They just threw in a line to
Well, that's the same as Q. That's the same. Q has the same ending.
They do
though.
the same
Q
thing
has
almost.
the same ending.
Where of course, they go to the egg, then it cracks open, another egg, and it cracks open. Oh, here we go again.
What did you think of David Carradine's performance on Q?
He was good.
He seemed like he was having fun with
Yeah,
this movie.
I
Like
think so.
He was kind of smirking and having a good time through a lot of the scenes.
I mean, hell,
he's
got a role where he gets to carry a gun on the Chrysler Building and shoot out at a. I mean, I'd be having fun too.
I would too. Yeah. So both of these movies were good.
And I
like
like the way that ended too, with him and them in the hallway. I was kind of like, just to end like right now. Like,
Yeah.
it'd be good, and then it did.
Yeah, that's always good when movies do that. Like this should be the last shot.
It's like they know when to call it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought both of these movies were good. I definitely. I'm glad you like Q because I think that was the better of the two. But you know, I think what they have a lot in common. But what we can say is that I mean they were both kind of like really over the top premises that you would typically find in like B monster movies, but filmed in a style other than what you would expect. So it gave you a lot more to talk about, which is nice for us.
A style, and not just a style to be different either. Kind of a style
No.
that they put their time into.
Yeah, and
they kind of thought out before.
Yeah, and they were interested in examining issues and characters beyond just like showing monsters, but they're interested in monsters.
I guess
too,
that's
you know?
why Ace Alive kind of falls short. I think they didn't really do that with that.
As much. I think everything they
kind of like noble effort, but
yeah, it was like kind of a first step that I think led to maybe probably better movies like Q. But I thought they were both good. I enjoyed them both.
That was a good double feature.
Yeah, it was. I wish we could have watched more movies by Larry Cohen because he's very prolific, still active today, primarily as a screenwriter. So he's definitely one we could revisit in a further episode of Brain Says Strange Things. Anything else to add about these two movies before we sign off?
I think I've said it.
Yeah, definitely see Q, and I would say check out It's Alive as well. I think they were both they're both definitely both worth seeing. I would say. Okay. All right. Well. Yep. All right. So that does it for this episode. Thanks as always for watching. Check us out on Facebook, and we will be back with another episode of Brain Says Strange Things. Until then, we'll see you later. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.